Rain was falling in steady, lazy drops when Harper turned the key in her aging Toyota and was greeted by the same familiar sputter. The same exact sound she had heard that morning. "Don't do this to me again," she whispered, half pleading with. The steering wheel as if guilt tripping the car into submission might work this time. It didn't. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds, inhaled, exhaled late. She was already late. The babysitter had arrived 5 minutes behind schedule. Her son Caleb had cried because he couldn't find his dinosaur pajamas, and she'd spent 10 full minutes convincing him the striped ones were just as brave. Now the engine was dead again, and she was supposed to be on her way to a blind date her sister had set up after months of begging. "You're wasting away," her sister had said dramatically. "You need to flirt, kiss, something. It's been 2 years, Harp." Harper didn't want to flirt. She wanted to collapse on the couch and scroll through furniture ads she couldn't afford while Caleb snored beside her. But she'd said yes this time, and now the universe was mocking her. She popped the hood, grabbed the toolkit she always kept. In the trunk, old habits from when her father was still around and insisted every girl needed to know how to survive, and braced herself against the cold. She was tightening the battery cable with numb fingers when she heard a soft voice behind. "Do you need a hand?" Harper turned, strands of hair sticking to her damp forehead. A woman stood there in jeans and a thick olive green coat, hands in her pockets, eyes gentle but alert. She had the kind of presence that made you notice her twice. Not just because she was striking, though she was in a quiet grounding sort of way, but because she looked at you like she'd already read a chapter of your life. "It's fine," Harper said instinctively, brushing hair from her face. "It just needs to be bullied into starting." The woman smiled. "Sounds like you and my truck." "We get along?" Harper glanced down the street. A beat-up Navy pickup was parked half a block away with the hood up. "Battery starter?" "I think I was about to give up and call someone, but here you are with tools in the rain and me cute in the wild." Harper laughed, caught off guard by the comment, and by how much warmer she suddenly felt. "You think this is cute?" "Well, the woman said, taking a slow step closer, I find resourceful women attractive, especially ones elbow deep in engine grease." Harper raised an eyebrow, surprised by the easy boldness. "That's very specific, guilty." The woman extended a hand. "Elliot." Harper hesitated, then shook it. Firm grip, warm skin. "Harper. Nice to meet you, Harper. Even if it's under tragic correlated circumstances." Harper tilted her head. "Are you flirting with me while stranded in the rain? Is it working?" Elliot's eyes crinkled at the edges as she smiled. Harper's lips curved despite herself. "I was supposed to be on a blind date tonight. Lucky them. They're still waiting somewhere. And I'm standing in the rain talking to a woman who might be homeless for all I know. Technically, I live 5 blocks from here, but your caution is noted." Elliot took a small step back, mocked solemn. "Would you like to see my ID?" "I'd rather fix your truck and call it a night." Generous offer. More like self-preservation. "If I don't help you, you might keep flirting." "That's highly likely." Harper sighed, shook her head, and walked toward the Navy pickup. "Pop the hood." Elliot obeyed, following her with a quiet energy that felt comforting. They worked in near silence, save for occasional instructions and playful quips. It felt oddly natural. When Harper leaned over the engine, Elliot held the flashlight steady, their arms brushing. It was nothing, barely a touch, but it made Harper sharply aware of the gap between warmth and cold, and how easy it was for someone to cross that space without warning. 15 minutes later, the truck started with a low growl. "You did it," Elliot said, her voice a little too soft in the hush of night. "You fixed it?" Harper wiped her hands on her jeans. "I am a mom. I fix things. It's what we do." "Well," Elliot said, leaning against the truck, "what do I owe you?" "Dinner?" Harper said without thinking, then blinked. "That was a joke." "I wasn't laughing," Elliot murmured, eyes locked on hers, for a long beat. Neither of them moved. Then Harper laughed, freaking the moment before it consumed her. I have to go. Really? Rain, check on dinner. You don't even know my last name. I don't need it to want. Another conversation. Harper hesitated, then pulled a pen from her coat pocket, another mom habit, and scribbled her number on Elliot's palm. Next time, try breaking down near a mechanic. I think I found one already. Harper turned, trying not to smile. As she walked away, she didn't look back, but she felt Elliot watching her, like the first unexpected thread in a fabric she hadn't realized was being woven. Harper had told herself she wouldn't think about her, that it had just been a moment, brief, unexpected, born out of rain and circumstance. But then 3 days passed, and she caught herself watching for Navy trucks when she walked Caleb to preschool. She didn't even know what Elliot did or where she worked or if she'd even call. And yet, every time her phone lit up, she half hoped it was her. It was ridiculous. She didn't do this. She didn't get caught up in possibilities. Her world was too full for fantasies, calendars packed with parent-teacher meetings, grocery runs, and the quiet ache of doing it all alone. But Elliot's eyes had lingered, and that linger had stayed with her. So when her phone rang on a Thursday evening as she was folding laundry and an unknown number appeared, her stomach did that stupid thing it hadn't done in years. Hello. There was a pause then. Hi, it's the woman whose truck you resurrected. I owe you dinner. Harper smiled before she could stop herself. You waited 3 days to say that? I didn't want to seem overeager. And now I don't care if I do. Harper sat down on the edge of her. Bed, socks forgotten in her lap. What did you have in mind? There's a place a few blocks from here. Nothing fancy, but the wine's good and the lights are low. Saturday. Harper glanced at her calendar, though she already knew Caleb would be with her mom that night. Okay. Elliot echoed, a slight breath of disbelief in her voice. Is that a yes or just politeness? It's a yes. Good. I was hoping for a yes. Saturday came faster than Harper expected. She stood in front of her closet, suddenly unsure of what to wear. Not because she wanted to impress Elliot. At least that's what she told herself, but because this didn't feel like any other date. It felt like a choice. Like saying yes to something she hadn't allowed herself to want in a long time. When she arrived at the restaurant, Ellie was already waiting outside, leaning against the wall like she'd stepped out of some half-forgotten dream. She wasn't dressed up, but she didn't need to be. Her confidence came from somewhere quieter than clothes. When she saw Harper, her face lit up. You came, you sound surprised. I'm trying to be cool about it. Am I failing a little? They smiled at each other, then walked inside. The restaurant was cozy, all amber light and dark wood. They sat in a corner, booth, shoulders almost touching. Conversation flowed easily. Elliot talked about her childhood on a farm, how she hated the early mornings, but loved the stillness of open land. Harper found herself talking about Caleb more than she usually did on dates, how he was obsessed with space, how he narrated everything he did like a tiny documentary host. Elliot listened like every word mattered. And when she asked questions, they weren't obligatory. They were curious, intentional. So Harper asked after their plates were cleared, "Do you always charm women by breaking down in front of them? Only the ones who look like they fix things for everyone else, but forget about themselves." The words hit Harper somewhere unguarded. She looked away, blinking. That's a little too accurate. I pay attention, Elliot said softly. They walked out into the cool night, the air crisp with promise. Harper hesitated outside her car. This was unexpected. In a good way, I hope, yeah. Elliot looked at her for a long second. I don't know if this is too soon or too forward or too anything, but I'd really like to kiss you right now. Harper's breath caught. She hadn't been kissed in months, maybe years. In the way that actually mattered. Then do it. Elliot stepped closer slowly, as if giving Harper the space to change her mind. When their lips met, it was nothing like Harper expected, and everything she hadn't realized she was starving for. It wasn't rushed or showy. It was warm, intentional. Her hand found Elliot's jacket, holding her there for 1 second longer than necessary. When they finally parted, Harper felt like the world had tilted slightly. "Okay," she murmured. Yeah, Elliot smiled. "I'll walk you to your car." They stood beside the door, neither moving to open it. "I don't usually do this," Harper said. "Blind dates. This feels something this fast?" "Me neither." Another beat. Then Harper unlocked the door and slid a window down. "Call me. I already want to," Elliot said, stepping back. "Drive safe." Harper watched her disappear in the rear-view mirror. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone on the drive home. Sunday morning brought sunlight through the blinds and the distant sound of cartoons echoing from the living room. Harper stirred slowly, not because she was tired, but because something inside her felt softer than usual. It wasn't the kiss, although that kiss had rewired her. It was the way Elliot had looked at her afterward, like she wasn't just a fleeting thing, but someone worth lingering for. She rose, padded barefoot into the kitchen, and found Caleb sitting cross-legged on the couch, a bowl of dry cereal in his lap, his hair a messy halo. He looked up at her with sleepy eyes and a grin that reminded her of his father, and not at all like his father all at once. "You smell like perfume," he said suspiciously. "Do I?" she asked, finding innocence. "And your lips are shiny." "Are they?" "Now." Caleb squinted at her, then took a giant bite of cereal. "Did you kiss someone?" Harper froze. "Where would you even learn to ask that?" "TV," he said proudly, "and maybe because you're humming." Harper hadn't even noticed. She was humming. Elliot hadn't messaged yet, and she wasn't sure if she should be the one to reach out. What were the rules now? She didn't want to seem desperate, but she also didn't want to play games. She liked her? That wasn't a game. By afternoon, her phone buzzed. One word, coffee. Harper stared at it, smiled, then typed, "Yes, but I have a +1 today." Elliot replied with a sun emoji and a heart. They met at a quiet cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Harper walked in holding Caleb's hand, her bag slung over one shoulder, her sunglasses pushed back into her hair. Elliot was already there, 2 drinks in hand and a chocolate muffin sitting on a plate between them. When she saw them, her whole face lit up. "You must be Caleb," she said, crouching slightly to his level. Caleb looked up at Harper, unsure. "It's okay," she said gently. "This is Elliot. Are you Mom's friend?" He asked, blunt as ever. "I hope so," Elliot replied with a soft smile. "Do you like muffins?" "Only chocolate," he said seriously. "Perfect." "I guessed, right." He sat down, taking the offering like a tiny king. Harper slid into the booth across from Elliot, their knees brushing under the table. "Thanks for this," she said. "I don't usually bring him along, but don't apologize," Elliot cut. "Anne, this is part of you. I like this part." Harper studied her for a moment, wondering if it was too good to be true. If Elliot's warmth was temporary, or if she'd be one more person who found the motherhood part too complicated. But Elliot was laughing. At something Caleb said genuinely, like the kid had just told the best joke in the world. And Harper felt something in her chest settle. They spent the morning talking, the 3 of them, but it was different than dinner. Softer, fuller, more real. Harper found herself watching Elliot through new eyes. As someone who didn't flinch at interruptions, who offered napkins without. Being asked who listened when Caleb explained his theories about comets. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more, and let me know in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Later, as they walked toward the car, Caleb ran ahead a few steps, pretending to fly. Harper turned to Elliot. "You're really good with him. He's amazing," Elliot said simply. "But also, I used to be a nanny during college. I've been bossed around by smaller tyrants. That explains it." "Explains what?" "Why you're not panicking." Elliot stopped beside her, their arms almost brushing. Harper, I'm not here for a perfect date. I'm here for you. Whatever that means, whatever. It includes. The words were quiet, but they landed with weight. Harper looked at her, surprised by the clarity. You don't even know me. I know how I felt the second you touched my engine with that look on your face, like you were going to fix the whole world. You're romanticizing a dead battery, Harper, whispered, but her voice shook a little. Maybe, but I don't care. I like you. Caleb called for her from the car. Harper stepped back, her fingers trailing briefly over Elliot's wrist. I like you too, she said, and drove away with a feeling she hadn't tasted in years. The beginning of something that just might last. Elliot didn't message the next morning, or the one after that, and Harper hated how much that bothered her. It wasn't logical. They had just met. A kiss, a coffee, a sweet moment with Caleb didn't mean anything yet. It shouldn't. But Harper was past the age of pretending she didn't care when she did. Every time her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted with hope. And when it wasn't Elliot, the twist became something bitter. She tried to distract herself. Laundry. Caleb's science fair project. A quick run to the market. Still, she kept seeing Elliot's smile in the corner of her mind, hearing her say, I'm here for you, whatever that means. And Harper had believed her. That was the worst part. By Wednesday, she'd half convinced herself it was over before it had even begun. Maybe Elliot had felt the weight of Caleb, of all the complications that came with dating a single mom. Maybe she'd gone back to someone else. Or maybe that kiss had meant more to Harper than it had to her. She was folding Caleb's clothes that night when her phone finally lit up. Elliot. Dinner Friday. I've been dying to see you, but didn't want to overwhelm you. Also, I miss your face. Harper's fingers froze mid-fold. Her heart stumbled. She stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. You're 2 days late. You better bring dessert. The reply came in seconds. Only if you let me feed it to you. Harper didn't smile. She laughed out loud. The sound startled Caleb, who was walking past her door with a Lego spaceship in hand. Are you okay? He asked, eyeing her wearily. I'm great, she said, ruffling his hair. Go finish your space station. It's a colony, he corrected. Obviously, Friday came with that familiar pretty anxiety Harper hadn't felt in years. Not the shallow nervousness of wanting to look good, but the deeper vulnerability of wanting it to mean something. She wore a black blouse, subtle makeup, and left her hair down soft around her shoulders. When she opened the door, Elliot stood. They're holding a bottle of wine in one hand and a small cake box in the other. You weren't kidding about dessert, Harper said. I take instructions very seriously, Elliot replied, eyes roaming over her slowly. You look dangerous. I'm holding back, Harper said, stepping aside. I didn't want to scare you. Too late. They both smiled. Harper led her to the kitchen where the table was already set with 2 plates and a candle flickering between them. Caleb was spending the night at her mom's. The apartment was unusually quiet, which made every glance, every pause feel heavier. This smells amazing, Elliot said, breathing in the air. I made pasta. It's the only thing I can cook without cursing. I like a little profanity with my carbs. They sat, and for a while, everything was laughter and wine and stolen looks across the table. Then came dessert, and Elliot, true to her word, fed her the first bite of cake with a grin and her fingers touching Harper's lips just a second too long. The tension was there, coiled and warm, but it wasn't rushed. They didn't need to race toward anything. The intimacy was already growing in all the quiet ways that mattered. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Music played low from a playlist. Harper had forgotten was still on. They talked about everything. How Harper had left her architecture degree halfway through when she got pregnant. How Elliot once spent a year living out of her truck just to prove she could. How they both hated. Small talk but loved eye contact. So you never went back? Elliot asked, tracing the rim of her wine glass. To school? Harper shook her head. I thought I would, but life had other plans. And then I stopped thinking I deserved to. Elliot looked at her quiet for a moment. That's not true. It felt true. Well, Elliot said, scooting closer, let's make a deal. Every time you say something cruel about yourself, I get to do this. She leaned in, kissed Harper's cheek. And this, another kiss, softer at the corner of her mouth. And definitely this. Their lips met again, slower this time, deeper. Harper tilted her head, one hand finding Elliot's jaw. The kiss lingered, and when they pulled back, they were both breathless. Okay, Harper whispered. That's a dangerous game. Then stop doubting yourself, Elliot said, brushing a thumb along Harper's cheekbone. I can't afford to keep kissing you all night. Liar. Absolute liar. Elliot agreed. They laughed forehead to forehead. Harper's hand stayed on Elliot's knee, warm and unhurried. The night moved on gently. They didn't rush anything past what felt natural. At one point, Harper curled into Elliot's side, her head against her shoulder, and they just sat like that, not talking, just being. And when it was time for Elliot to leave, neither of them wanted to move. Can I see you tomorrow? Elliot asked at the door. I'm free after Caleb's soccer practice, Harper said. Text me. You better answer faster this time, Harper teased, or I'll start thinking you're not into me. I'm very into you, Elliot said, stepping closer, her voice low. You have no idea. Another kiss, this one lingering. When the door closed, Harper leaned back against it, her heart hammering in a way she hadn't let it in years. It was happening. She was falling and it terrified her, but more than that, it thrilled her. The smell of grass and wet cleats filled the air as Harper sat on the aluminum bleachers, arms crossed loosely over her chest, eyes fixed on the soccer field. Caleb was chasing the ball with a kind of reckless energy that only 7-year-olds possessed, arms flailing, shirt already half untucked, hair flying. Harper smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face as the wind picked up. It was Saturday afternoon, and the sun was surprisingly warm for early spring. She kept checking her phone, even though she knew Elliot wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes. Harper had told her not to come if she was busy, that she didn't have to make an appearance at Caleb's practice just to prove a point. But Elliot had simply said, I want to see both of you. Besides, I like soccer, it's chaotic and adorable. When she finally did show up, hair pulled into a low bun, sunglasses pushing back from her face, coffee in each hand, Harper felt something tighten in her chest. Not nerves, something closer to anticipation. Did I miss any epic goals? Elliot asked, handing Harper one of the cups. Caleb tripped over his own foot and called it a strategic fall. Harper said, grinning, He's definitely mine. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's just obvious. Elliot sat beside her, their thighs brushing. So, what's the deal here? You guys always come to these things alone. Mostly, my mom comes sometimes if I'm working. But yeah, it's usually just us. Not anymore, Elliot said simply. Harper glanced at her, uncertain how to respond. The words were easy, but they felt heavy. Real. Elliot didn't say them like a placeholder. She meant them, and Harper felt the weight of what that meant. Not just for her, but for Caleb. You're not afraid of this, are you? Harper asked, her voice lower now. Of this being complicated. Elliot sipped her coffee. I'm terrified, she admitted. But that has nothing to do with Caleb or you. I'm afraid because I actually want this to work. Harper turned her body slightly toward her. You do? God, yes. You have no idea. Harper exhaled, a breath she didn't realize. She'd been holding. Caleb waved from across the field, a wild smile on his face. That's her, he shouted to one of his teammates. That's my mom's friend. Elliot laughed. I've been upgraded from stranger with a broken truck. He'll figure out the right word eventually. I'm in no rush. I like earning it. They stayed until practice ended. Caleb ran to them with grass-stained knees and a scraped elbow, which he wore like a badge of honor. Elliot knelt beside him, gently examining the scratch. You're a warrior, she said. Obviously, he replied. Can we get pizza? Harper looked at Elliot, who smiled and nodded. Pizza sounds like a plan. At the little corner pizzeria, Caleb dominated. The conversation with stories from practice, space facts, and a detailed description of his dream bedroom, which apparently included a ceiling projector of the solar system and a voice-activated snack dispenser. Elliot listened with full attention, occasionally locking eyes with Harper across the table as if to silently say he's perfect, and you are too. Afterward, they walked home slowly. Caleb walked ahead, hopping over sidewalk cracks like they were. Lava, Harper, and Elliot followed, shoulders brushing, arms close but not touching. Thank you, Harper said softly. For today, for showing up. I'll always show up, Elliot said. If you let me. Harper stopped walking. Elliot took one more step, before realizing and turning around to face her. You mean that? Harper asked, eyes searching. Yes, because I don't let people in like this. Not often, and never with Caleb. This is sacred territory, Elliot. I can't afford another person who doesn't stay. Elliot stepped closer, her hand, reaching up to gently cup Harper's face. Then you should know right now. I'm not planning on leaving. Harper blinked, her throat tightening. Don't say that unless you're sure. I'm not sure of anything in this world, Elliot whispered, except how I feel when I'm with you. That's the only thing that makes sense right now. The kiss that followed wasn't passionate or rushed. It was quiet, full of gratitude, of weight of choosing. When they broke apart, Caleb was waiting up ahead, arms crossed, mock impatient. You guys are slow, he called out. Elliot took Harper's hand, threading their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. Guess we better catch up, she said. And Harper didn't let go. The first time Harper invited Elliot into her apartment for the night, it wasn't planned. There was no dramatic pause at the door, no lingering stare asking for permission. It was just late. Rain was falling again. Caleb was already asleep. They'd been on the couch watching some movie Harper could barely follow because Elliot's hand had found the bare skin of her thigh and stayed there, warm and grounding like it belonged. Harper had rested her head on Elliot's shoulder, breathing her in, and somewhere between the credits and a soft, familiar silence, she murmured, "Stay." Elliot had looked at her, eyes calm but unreadable. You sure? Harper nodded. Yes. They didn't rush. Harper led her to the bedroom quietly, careful not to wake Caleb. The moment the door closed behind them, she turned slowly, her back to it, watching. As Elliot took a breath, like she too was realizing the weight of this moment. This wasn't about sex. This was about trust. About letting someone in, not just into a room, but into everything. Harper stepped forward first. She touched Elliot's face gently, fingers trailing from temple to jaw. I haven't done this in a long time, she whispered. Then we don't rush, Elliot said. We go slow or we stop. Whatever you need. But Harper didn't want to stop. She wanted to feel everything. She kissed her with quiet intention, with a softness that said, "Thank you for staying," with hands that trembled slightly when they found Elliot's waist. Elliot moved with the patience of someone who understood how rare this kind of closeness was. She held Harper like she was memorizing the shape of her, their breaths sinking as the kiss deepened. Clothes fell gradually like petals, each one a layer dropped with care. When Harper lay back on the bed, Elliot followed, her lips trailing. Down Harper's collarbone with reverence, her hands mapping skin like a story. There was no performance, no urgency, just the kind of intimacy that happens when two people are completely, painfully aware of each other. Afterward, they lay tangled in silence. Harper's head rested against Elliot's chest, her fingers drawing lazy patterns over her stomach. You okay? Elliot asked, voice low. Harper nodded. More than okay. A pause. Then I'm trying not to fall too fast, Elliot admitted. But I'm already gone for you. Harper looked up, their eyes meeting in the low light. Then maybe we fall together. Elliot smiled, pulled her close again, and they drifted into sleep like that, wrapped in each other, no distance left between them. Morning came quietly. Caleb, as always, was up early. Harper stirred at the sound of feet padding down the hallway, followed by the unmistakable creak of the fridge door. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, then remembered Elliot in her bed next to her, still asleep, one arm slung over Harper's waist. Harper slipped out carefully, throwing on a robe and padded into the kitchen. Caleb was pouring cereal with a concentration level reserved for brain surgery. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. "You hungry always?" He looked up at her, eyes narrowing. "You look like you didn't sleep much." "I slept fine," she said, trying to suppress a smile. "Did Elliot sleep here?" Harper paused. "She did." Caleb considered this while chewing. "Is she her girlfriend now?" Harper blinked. "I don't know, maybe. Do you want her to be?" "She likes my space project, and she helped me fix the broken wheel on my robot." "So, yeah." Harper crouched to his level. "It's okay if you tell me if you don't like something, okay? About her, about any of this." Caleb shrugged. "She's cool, but if she takes my seat on the couch again, I'm going to say something." Harper laughed. Fair deal. When she returned to the bedroom, Elliot was sitting up, sheets tangled around her waist, hair wild and eyes soft with sleep. "Is this the part where you pretend last night didn't happen?" she asked playfully. Harper shook her head, crawling back onto the bed. "This is the part where I ask if you want pancakes. Are they made by you or store-bought and disguised with syrup?" Offended, deeply offended. "So, store-bought." Harper leaned in, brushed her lips against Elliot's. "Stay for breakfast. I thought you'd never ask." They spent the morning in a rhythm that felt almost too natural for something so new. Harper cooked while Elliot and Caleb sat at the kitchen counter, debating the plausibility of time travel. "Elliot?" made Caleb laugh so hard milk came out of his nose. Harper watched them, spatula in hand, and felt a quiet thud in her chest, a realization that this wasn't just a fling or a sweet chapter. This was turning into something that mattered. Something. She might not survive losing if it ever disappeared. Later, after dishes were done and Caleb was distracted with cartoons, Harper and Elliot sat on the back steps with coffee mugs in hand, sunlight warming their bare legs. So Elliot said, "Girlfriend?" Harper raised a brow. "You asking or declaring?" "Both." Harper smiled. "Yeah. Okay, girlfriend." Elliot exhaled, leaning her head on Harper's shoulder. "Good, because I was going to be really dramatic if you said no." "Oh, I know. You're a little bit chaos under all that calm." "You're the first person who's ever seen that. You're the first person who's ever seen all of me," Harper whispered and stayed. Elliot turned her face, kissed Harper's shoulder, and for the first time in years, Harper felt completely, irrevocably wanted. 3 weeks later, Harper was standing in the bathroom, hair still damp from the shower, staring into the mirror with a toothbrush in her mouth and a very real, very unfamiliar sensation pressing at her chest. Happiness. It wasn't loud or euphoric. It wasn't fireworks or music swelling in the background. It was quieter than that, steady, grounding, like the soft hum of something she'd waited years to feel again. Elliot had stayed over twice more since that night. Always after Caleb was asleep, always leaving early enough to keep things simple. Not because they were hiding. Harper wasn't ashamed, but because introducing someone into Caleb's routine had to happen gently, with care. Elliot never pushed, never asked for more than Harper could give. But every time she showed up with takeout and a new sci-fi fact for Caleb, Harper's guard lowered a little more. That morning, Caleb was going on a weekend camping trip with Harper's mother, an annual tradition that Harper never joined. And for the first time, she had an entire 2 days to herself. Elliot had offered to take her away for the weekend. Nothing extravagant, just a cabin a few hours outside the city, something cozy and quiet, a fireplace, a deck, trees. The idea had thrilled and terrified Harper in equal measure. But She'd said yes, and now she was pacing her apartment, heart skipping like she was 18 again. When Elliot knocked, Harper opened the door barefoot in jeans and a sweater, hair still damp and wild. Elliot's smile was instant. God, you look like a painting. A chaotic one. My favorite kind. They kissed at the door slowly, like there was no reason to rush. Then they loaded up the car, and Harper felt something inside her settle just from being near Elliot's calm. The drive was full of music and long conversations, the kind that wandered from dreams to regrets to ridiculous childhood memories. Harper talked about her father's stubbornness, her mother's laugh, the day she found out she was pregnant. Elliot told her about her brother's sudden death when she was 19, about running away from everything for a while, about the quiet guilt she still carried for surviving. Harper reached across the center console and held her hand until the silence felt like forgiveness. When they arrived at the cabin, it was even more beautiful than the photos. Wood and stone, warm light, the smell of pine in the air. Harper stood on the deck, exhaling deeply. It's so quiet. You say that like it's a bad thing. No, Harper said. It's just, I forgot how to be still. Elliot came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Harper's waist, resting her chin on her shoulder. Then let's remember together. That night, they lit a fire and cooked simple food and danced barefoot to old jazz on Elliot's playlist. Harper couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed so freely, or when her body had felt this wanted, this adored without hesitation or apology. They kissed in front of the fireplace, slow and deep, clothes peeled off in a trail across the wooden floor. This time there was no nervousness, no holding back. Harper let herself be seen completely, and Elliot didn't flinch. She traced every inch of her skin like she was memorizing a map. Whispered things that Harper never thought her body would hear again. That she was beautiful, that she was safe, that she was home. After they lay tangled in blankets and warmth, Harper's head against Elliot's chest, her fingers tracing the edge of her ribs. Do you ever feel like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop? Harper whispered. Every day, Elliot said. But then I remind myself, I don't have to live in fear. I can just live and let the good things stay. Even if they feel like they don't belong to you, especially then. Harper looked up. You think this is a good thing? I think this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Harper leaned up, kissed her softly, and something inside her cracked open. Not pain, not fear, just truth. Real, raw, terrifying truth. And all she could say was, me too. The next morning, they woke to sunlight cutting across the bed and birds singing just beyond the window. Elliot made coffee while Harper sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. Legs curled beneath her, heart still heavy with the weight of how much. She was starting to love this woman. When Elliot brought her a mug, Harper took it with both hands, eyes searching. Do you think this is going too fast? Elliot sat beside her. No, I think this is going exactly the way it's meant to. Harper rested her head on Elliot's shoulder. I'm scared. Me too, but I still want it. Then we keep choosing each other every day, no matter what. And Harper knew in that moment that she would. She'd choose Elliot again and again. Even if the world cracked open beneath her feet, she would still reach for her. The weekend in the cabin became something Harper replayed in her mind like a favorite film. Soft filters, warmth, the kind of happiness she'd stopped believing was made for her. But returning home meant slipping back into her carefully balanced routine. The rhythm of lunchboxes and alarm clocks, permission slips, and bedtime stories. Life didn't pause just because her heart had started beating in someone else's hands. Elliot texted her every day, called when she could, always finding time between work and the chaos of her own world to say, I'm here. Sometimes Harper answered immediately. Other times, she stared at the screen for a while before responding. Not because she didn't want to, but because she did too much. That scared her. What if this wasn't built to last? What if all this softness was just the prelude to a collapse? One night, after putting Caleb to bed, Harper sat alone in the kitchen, a half glass of wine untouched in front of her, scrolling. through her camera roll. She stopped on a photo Elliot had taken during the trip. Harper sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, hair messy, coffee in hand, looking out into the woods with a quiet smile. She didn't even remember smiling like that. It was too unguarded, too free. The doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Heart quickening, she opened the door and found Elliot standing there, hair damp from light rain. Cody zipped halfway, eyes full of something unreadable. "I know I should have called," Elliot said breathless, "but I couldn't sit in my apartment." One more second, pretending I didn't feel like I was about to lose you. Harper stared, her voice stuck. "You're not losing me, aren't it?" Elliot stepped inside without waiting for permission. "You've been quieter. You hesitate when I call. You pull away when I touch you. I feel it, Harper. Don't tell me I'm imagining it." Harper closed the door behind her, leaning against it like she needed support. "I'm trying to breathe." "I get that. I do. But please don't shut me out while you're trying." Harper looked down, swallowing hard. "I've spent so long keeping everything controlled for Caleb. For me, I built this life with both hands after everything fell apart. I can't let it collapse again. And sometimes," she paused, forcing the words out, "sometimes being with you feels so good, I start waiting for it to go wrong. Like I'm borrowing happiness I'll have to get back." Elliot crossed the room slowly, cubed Harper's face, gently, not pulling her in, just holding her there. "Then let it feel good. Let it be real. You're not borrowing anything. You deserve to be happy. Not just for a weekend. Not just when the world's quiet all the time. And I want to be the person who reminds you of that every damn day." Harper's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She leaned in, forehead pressed to Elliot's, their breaths mingling. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." "You don't have to stop," Elliot whispered. "You just have to trust me enough to be afraid with me." The kiss that followed wasn't about passion. It was about grounding, about choosing, about letting someone stay through the panic, not just the peace. Later, they sat curled on the couch. Harper tucked beneath Elliot's arm, her fingers laced through hers. "What if I messed this up?" she asked quietly. "Then we fix it together. What if I panic again? Then I hold your hand and wait for you to come back. What if I hurt you?" Elliot kissed her hair. "Then we talk and we try again." Harper exhaled, finally letting herself lean fully into the embrace. "You're either dangerously stubborn or incredibly in love with me. Both. Do you think it's worth it?" "I know it is." Harper turned her face toward her, kissed her softly, then pulled back just enough to say it finally. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Elliot didn't flinch, didn't gasp. She smiled calm and steady. "I've been waiting for you to catch up." And Harper knew maybe for the first time that she wasn't standing on the edge of something fragile. She was standing inside something strong, something real. Love didn't change Harper's world in a dramatic sweep. It didn't erase the dishes in the sink or make Caleb magically clean his room or make Harper less tired by the end of the day. But it did settle into her life like a steady pulse, constant, reliable, present. Elliot was there in small ways that, first, she'd show up with Harper's favorite snacks on days when she hadn't eaten properly. She'd leave notes in Caleb's lunchbox that said things like, "Mars has 2 moons. You're cooler than both." And she'd hold Harper in the kitchen when she looked too exhausted to finish folding another towel. Harper found herself laughing more, sleeping better, wanting things again, things she'd stopped believing she could have, like softness and joy and a future that wasn't built on survival. But along with the closeness came something else, vulnerability. A quiet voice in the back of Harper's mind that whispered, "This could be taken from you too." The voice never shouted, never panicked. It just waited until the moment came. And it came one Tuesday morning in the form of a phone call. Harper was halfway through packing Caleb's backpack when the screen lit up. Unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello. Hi. Is this Harper Morgan?" The voice was female, professional, and unfamiliar. "Yes. Who's this?" My name is Brooke. I'm Elliot Blake's ex. Silence. Sharp and immediate. Harper's stomach dropped. She looked at Caleb, who was humming to himself while arranging his dinosaurs by species on the couch. What is this? Look, I'm not calling to cause drama. I just thought if she hasn't told you about me, you should ask her why. Harper's pulse picked up. She mentioned an ex. Did she mention we were engaged? Harper's body went still. Her breath, too. No, she said carefully. She didn't. She left. One day to the next, packed up, disappeared. No explanation, no goodbye. She just walked out of a life we built together. I thought you should know that before you let her walk into yours. The call ended before Harper could form a single reply. The silence that followed was louder than any fight she'd ever had. That night, Elliot came over with a bag of groceries and 2 cans of Caleb's favorite juice. She kissed Harper's cheek, ran her fingers down her arm, unaware that something had shifted. Harper let it simmer through dinner, through Caleb's bedtime story, through the washing of the dishes, until they were alone. I got a phone call today, Harper said quietly, drying her hands, from someone named Brooke. Elliot froze, then slowly set down the sponge. Okay. She said you were engaged. Elliot didn't deny it. She looked down, jaw tight. I was. And you left. Yes, without a word. Elliot nodded once. That was a long time ago, Harper. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now. I don't care that you were engaged. I care that you didn't. Trust me enough to tell me the truth. Elliot stepped closer, voice low. It wasn't about trust. It was about shame. I stayed in something that felt wrong for too long. And when I finally had the courage to leave, I couldn't do it gently. I had to run. I hated who I was in that relationship. And I didn't want to carry that version of me into this. But you did, because now I'm standing here wondering if one day you'll run again. From me, from Caleb, I would never. You already did it once, Elliot. That wasn't love. This is Harper looked at her. Eyes burning, then prove it. Stop running. Tell me everything. Even the parts you think I won't like. I'd rather see the whole of you than keep falling in love with a version I don't really know. Elliot's voice cracked when she spoke again. I loved her once, but it wasn't right. We were trying to be people we weren't. And instead of confronting, I panicked. I thought leaving made me brave. It didn't. It just made me a coward who couldn't face the hurt. I've regretted the way I left every day since. Not the choice, just the silence. Harper stepped back, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. I don't need you to be perfect, but I need to know you won't disappear on me when things get hard. I won't. Not with you. A pause then softly. Not with Caleb. Harper searched her eyes for a long time, looking for cracks, for lies. But all she saw was someone terrified of losing something they didn't think they deserved. And in that, she recognized herself. Slowly, she reached for Elliot's hand. I don't want easy. I want honest. Elliot's breath trembled as she laced their fingers together. Then I'll give you all of it. The good, the hard, the messy. I'm yours, heartfully. And just like that, something mended. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. That night, as they lay in bed, Harper rested her head on Elliot's chest and whispered, Next time there's something scary in your past, tell me before your ex does. Elliot groaned, burying her face in Harper's hair. Deal! And despite the tension, despite the questions still lingering, Harper fell asleep, feeling her heartbeat against someone else's and thinking, we're still choosing each other, and that had to count for something. For the next few days, everything moved a little slower. Not colder, just slower. Like a bruise forming under the skin that Harper kept pressing gently, checking if it still hurt. Elliot gave her space without pulling away. She still came over. Still made dinner with Harper, helped Kayla with homework, folded laundry on the couch while some animated movie played in the background. But there was a new awareness in the way she touched Harper's arm. The way her eyes lingered like she was silently asking, "Are we still okay?" And they were, mostly. But something had cracked open inside Harper the night Brooke called something. She couldn't ignore it wasn't just about the past. It was about the part of her that still flinched at the idea of being surprised, of waking up one day to find someone gone. That fear was anew. It had lived quietly under her skin since Caleb's. Father walked out 2 weeks after the ultrasound. It had learned to be polite, controlled, functional, but now it was louder, restless, because she was falling harder than she expected. Loving Elliot wasn't theoretical anymore, it was real. It was happening, and real love came with risk. One afternoon, while Caleb was at a friend's house, Harper and Elliot sat outside on the apartment steps with iced tea and bare feet. The sun painted Elliot's skin in gold, and Harper watched her. Heart twisted. "You want to ask me something?" Elliot said, not looking up. "I can feel it." Harper hesitated. "Then why didn't you tell me about her sooner?" Elliot exhaled slowly. "Because I didn't know how to explain the worst version of myself to someone who sees me like you do." Harper was quiet. "You said you regretted the way you left. Did you ever go back to talk to her?" "No, I didn't have the courage. I figured she hated me. Maybe she did. Maybe she still does." Harper nodded, then stared out at the quiet street. You're not that version anymore. I'm trying not to be." Harper reached over and placed her hand over Elliot's. "I want to know everything, even the messy. I'm not made of glass." "I know," Elliot said, voice rough. "You're made of iron." That night, Harper pulled Elliot into bed without hesitation. Not for sex, but for something deeper. She curled into her like she was trying to imprint her shape into memory. Elliot held her in silence, fingers brushing slow circles into her back. "You scare me," Harper whispered into the dark. "Good kind of scare or bad kind?" "The kind that makes me want more." Elliot didn't reply right away, then softly, "I've never wanted a life before. Not like this. Not with anyone. And sometimes I catch myself picturing things, school plays, birthdays, old age, and you're always there. You and Caleb." Harper blinked against tears. "Say that again." "You and Caleb," Elliot whispered, kissing the crown of her head. "You're it for me." Harper didn't speak, just held her tighter. The next morning, she found Caleb in the living room building. A space station with unmatched socks and cereal boxes. He looked up and asked, "Is Elliot going to be my Steeperson?" Harper nearly choked on her coffee. "You're what?" "You know, like a stepmom, but cooler." Harper sat down beside him. "Where did you even learn that word?" "Cartoons," he shrugged. "And Jason has 2 stepmoms. They're awesome. One of them makes her own soap. I think Elliot would be better, though. She doesn't smell like lemons." Harper laughed, heart cracking open in the best way. "We're not there yet, buddy." "But are we going there?" Harper paused. "We're going somewhere. And it's good." "Okay." Caleb nodded solemnly. "As long as she never touches my robot collection, I'll make sure that's in writing." That night, Harper told Elliot about the conversation. They were lying in bed, legs tangled under the sheets, their bodies relaxed in that familiar, warm silence. Elliot grinned. "Step person?" "Huh? Apparently, you've been promoted." "Do I get a badge?" "No, but you might have to attend a school talent show at some point. That's worse." Harper turned toward her, her expression softening. "Are you okay with all this?" Elliot brushed hair from Harper's cheek. "I was made for this." And Harper believed her, not because she said it like a promise, but because she'd already shown it every day, in every quiet, steady way. And as Harper fell asleep that night, wrapped in the arms of someone who didn't run from her shadows, but instead leaned into them, she realized the fear was still there. But it didn't matter anymore because love wasn't about being fearless. It was about choosing someone even when you were scared. And for the first time in years, she was ready to choose. Harper stood at the window with a coffee mug in her hand, watching Elliot in the parking lot below. She was teaching Caleb how to check the oil in her truck, Sleeves rolled up, hair tied in a messy knot, eyes patient. Caleb wore a plastic fireman's helmet and held the dipstick like it was a sword. Harper smiled, hurtful in that way that hurt a little. Too much beauty in one moment. Too much gratitude. Too much love pressing against her ribs like it needed more space than her body could give. It had been 4 months since the cabin, 3 since the confrontation with Brooke, and now, without quite realizing how it happened, Harper's life was no longer separated into before and after. It had become with Elliot, with laughter echoing. Down the hall at night with shared grocery lists and toothbrushes left in the same drawer, with Caleb making 2 plates instead of 1 when setting the table. It wasn't always smooth. Elliot still had nights where she disappeared into herself, where old grief pulled her quiet. Harper had days where stress left her afraid, too exhausted for conversation, but they moved through it together. No silent treatments, no walls, just presence, just trying. That morning after Caleb ran inside with greasy hands and a proud grin, Elliot followed, grabbing a paper towel and tossing Harper a wink. Your son is an excellent mechanic. Terrible with cleanup. He gets that from me, I figured. Harper leaned against the counter, watching Elliot wipe her hands. You like it here. What? The kitchen? The apartment? Elliot froze for a second, then looked up. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Harper shrugged, suddenly nervous. You're already here half the time. Your shampoo's in my shower. Caleb asks where you are when you're not around. I guess I'm wondering if you want to make it official. Move in. Elliot blinked slowly, then grinned like the sun was rising behind her eyes. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Elliot crossed the room in 2 steps and kissed her deep and grateful and grounding. Then, yes, God, yes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of boxes, laughter, and late-night reorganizing sessions that ended in kisses on the floor. Caleb insisted. Elliot take the drawer next to his Lego stash, just in case, and made her a welcome sign out of glitter and construction paper. It's crooked, Elliot said, taping it on the wall. It's perfect, Harper said, kissing the back of her neck. On their first official night as roommates, Harper cooked dinner while Elliot made dessert from a box mix Caleb picked out. They danced in the kitchen barefoot. Music low, Harper's laughter echoing as Elliot spun her around like a scene from an old movie. Later, when Caleb was asleep, Harper pulled Elliot onto the balcony where fairy lights glowed and the city hummed quietly below them. I used to think love had to look a certain way, Harper said, wrapped in a blanket, head against Elliot's shoulder. Like flowers, grand gestures, passion that burned all the time. And now I think love is quieter than I thought. Softer, like someone remembering how you take your coffee, like finding a note in your coat pocket, like having someone to share the silence with. Elliot kissed her temple. I think love is this. What you, Caleb? A sink full of dishes and a heart that doesn't feel alone anymore. Harper turned to her, eyes shining. I want to marry you someday. Elliot didn't flinch, didn't laugh. She just nodded, eyes full of something steady and warm. Someday, she whispered, you say the word and I'm yours forever. You already are. They stood there like that for a long time, not making promises they couldn't keep, just existing together. And that night, when Harper fell asleep in Elliot's arms, she didn't dream of the past. She didn't brace for disaster. She simply slept safe, loved home. It started with a fever. Just a soft warmth on Caleb's forehead one morning before school. The kind Harper recognized immediately. You're staying home, she said, brushing hair from his face. I'm fine, he protested, voice rough and eyes glassy. You're not? She looked over her shoulder at Elliot, who stood in the doorway, already dressed for work, mug of coffee in hand. Their eyes met, and without a word, Elliot stepped back, set her bag down, and pulled out her phone. I'll let them. No, I'm working from home today, she said. Caleb sniffled from the couch. Does this mean I get to watch cartoons and eat soup all day? Only if you promise to nap between episodes, Harper said, covering him with a blanket. He smiled. Weak but content. Best sick day ever. Harper spent the morning working from the dining table while Elliot stayed beside Caleb, reading to him, refilling water, whispering soft jokes between coughs. Harper watched them from afar, overwhelmed by the ease between them, by how Elliot fit into their life like she'd always belonged. That night, when Caleb was finally asleep, flushed and breathing easier, Harper collapsed onto the bed beside Elliot with a sigh. "You didn't have to do all that," she murmured. "I wanted to. He's part of you." "That means he's part of me too." Harper's throat tightened. She reached for Elliot's hand. "I don't know what I did to deserve this." "You survived," Elliot said gently. "You kept going. You chose love again. That's enough." Harper rolled into her, lips brushing Elliot's collarbone. "I'm scared of needing you this much. Then we can be scared together." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, exhaustion and comfort blending into something safe. But the next morning, Caleb's fever spiked. His cough deepened. Harper rushed him to urgent care, heart in her throat, Elliot at her side every second. Tests, vitals, the hours blurred into one another. Harper's hands wouldn't stop trembling, not because it was serious. It wasn't not yet, but because all she could think about was loss. She couldn't lose him. She couldn't. Elliot noticed. Pulled her aside while the nurse checked Caleb's oxygen. "Breathe," she whispered. "Harp, look at me." Harper did barely. "You're not alone. I'm here. No matter what, I'm right here." Harper nodded, eyes burning, body tight with helplessness. Later, when the doctor confirmed it was a strong flu and not something worse, Harper collapsed into the chair, head in her. Hands exhaling everything she'd held in. Elliot rubbed slow circles into her back. "It's okay now. He's okay." "I was so scared," Harper whispered. "I know." When they got home, Harper stayed up all night by Caleb's side, dozing in the rocking chair. Elliot brought her tea at 2 a.m., sat on the floor beside her, leaning her head on Harper's knee in silence. In the quiet, Harper looked down and whispered, "You didn't sign up for this." Elliot looked up, sleepy and serious. "Yes, I did. The second I kissed you in the rain, I signed up for all of it. The good, the hard, the ugly. I want every version of this life with you." Harper didn't answer. She just leaned down and kissed her. Soft, grateful, tired. Days passed. Caleb got better. The house returned to its rhythm. But something had shifted. Harper started letting Elliot do more. Pick Caleb up from school. Go to the grocery store on her own. Answer the door when someone knocked. Little things, big things. Trust in motion. One night, Caleb handed Elliot a drawing before bed. 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. One with long hair, one with short, one tiny with a cape. "That's me," he said proudly. "You have a cape?" Elliot asked. "Duh. I'm a space explorer." "What about us?" Harper asked, smiling. "You're the moms?" Caleb said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Harper looked at Elliot, her heart stuttering. Elliot's eyes glistened, but she just said, "Coolest promotion I've ever gotten." That night in the dark, Harper whispered, "What if this is it? What if we already have everything?" Elliot pulled her closer. "Then we hold on to it fiercely." And Harper believed her because after all the fear, all the cracks, all the years she'd spent learning to live with half a heart, this felt whole. Not perfect, but true. And that was more than enough. It started with a drawer. Harper was folding laundry in their bedroom. Caleb's shirts, Elliot's hoodies, her own worn cotton tees. And when she opened the dresser, she froze. There in the middle drawer was a small velvet box. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't wrapped. It just sat there quiet and still like it was waiting. Her breath caught. She didn't open it. She couldn't. She closed the drawer with careful hands and sat on the edge of the bed. Heart pounding, not fear, not panic, something else, something raw, deeper. She didn't mention it that night or the next, but it stayed with her, pressed into the back of her mind, pulsing like a second heartbeat. It wasn't that she didn't want to say yes. It was that yes meant everything. It meant forever. It meant letting someone stay even when life got messy, chaotic, boring, hard. It meant letting herself believe that love this good could last. 1 week passed, then 2, the velvet box remained untouched. And Elliot never brought it up until the night Harper couldn't hold it in anymore. They were on the couch. Caleb had just gone to sleep after insisting on making them each a paper crown. Elliot wore hers tilted sideways. Harper's was already crumpled in her lap. The TV played something neither of them were watching. Harper turned toward her, nerves threading. Through her voice, "You were going to ask me?" Elliot blinked. "What?" "The drawer." "The box?" "You were going to propose." Elliot didn't speak for a moment, then she nodded slowly. "Yes, why didn't you?" Elliot set down her mug and looked at her. Really looked at her because I wanted it to come from both of us. I didn't want to ask out of rhythm. I didn't want to catch you before you were ready. Harper reached for her hand. I wasn't sure how to feel. I saw it and everything in me lit up. But then I thought, what if I say yes and mess it up? What if we ruin it by trying to hold it too tightly? What if we make it better by building it together? Elliot said softly. What if we promise to keep choosing each other even when it's hard? Harper closed her eyes for a beat, then opened them. Ask me now. Elliot's lips parted. Here, now. Elliot stood slowly, like her body had suddenly become heavier with meaning. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out the small velvet box Harper had already seen. She dropped to one knee. Not dramatic. Not rehearsed, just real and trembling. Harper Morgan, Elliot said, voice shaking. I love you. I love your messy mornings and your stubborn strength. I love the way you love your son and how fiercely you love me. I don't know what life will throw at us, but I know I want to face all of it by your side. Will you marry me? Harper didn't cry. She laughed. Big, breathless, beautiful laughter that filled the room. Yes, of course. Yes. You didn't even have to ask. Elliot stood and Harper met her halfway, wrapping her arms around her and kissing her with every answer she didn't have words for. The ring was simple gold with a tiny diamond that caught the light when Harper held up her hand, heart racing. They stayed like that for a long time, forwards pressed, silence full of promises. The next morning, Caleb found them sitting on the floor of the living room in matching pajamas, Harper's hand in Elliot's, their cheeks sore from smiling. Why are you guys so weird? He asked, suspicious. We're engaged, Harper said simply. You're what? Getting married? Caleb's eyes widened. Like forever? That's the plan, Elliot said, reaching for his hand. Is that okay with you? He considered for a second, then shrugged. Can I wear a cape to the wedding? Harper choked back a laugh. You can wear whatever you want. Cool. I'm going to meet Glitter. We'll make it happen, Elliot said. Later that day, Harper called her sister, told her everything, listened to her scream into the phone for a full 30 seconds before finally whispering, You deserve this, Harp. You deserve all of it. That night, they sat on the balcony again, just like they had so many times before. Elliot leaned into her, hand on Harper's stomach, fingers tracing slow circles. What does forever look like to you? She asked. Harper exhaled, looking out at the city. It looks like this. You, Caleb, a home full of noise and laundry and love. A life that feels like breathing. Then that's what we'll build. And Harper knew without hesitation, without fear that this time she wasn't falling. She was standing, rooted, ready. They didn't rush the wedding. There was no deadline, no race, no Pinterest board filled with overwhelming expectations. Just two women in love building a future at their own pace. Some mornings, Harper would catch Elliot sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook open, scribbling potential ideas. Wildflower bouquets, backyard lights, homemade playlists. Other times, Elliot would find Harper leaning against the doorway of Caleb's room, watching him sleep with a look on her face, like she was still trying to believe this life was real. One afternoon, while Harper folded laundry on the couch and Caleb lay on the floor surrounded by Lego pieces, Elliot came in with a soft kind of nervousness, clinging to her shoulders. I talked to my parents, she said carefully. Harper looked up, immediately alert. Yeah. Elliot nodded. Told them we're getting married. Told them about Caleb, about everything. How did they take it? Surprisingly well. My mom cried. My dad asked if he could walk me down the aisle with you instead of alone. Harper blinked. He said yes. Of course, I said yes, but only if you're okay with it. Harper smiled and tossed a folded towel onto the pile. I want every part of you in this wedding. That includes the ones who raised you. Elliot exhaled and crossed the room to sit beside her, resting her forehead against Harper's shoulder. You're too good. No, I just know what it's like to not be chosen, and I want to choose you in front of everyone who matters. They decided on a small ceremony backyard, lights strung in the trees. Caleb insisted on being the ring bearer and wearing a silver cape with Space Hero embroidered on the back. Because love is the biggest mission of all, he said solemnly. Elliot kissed the top of his head. You're going to steal the show. I always do, he replied without a hint of modesty. One night, a week before the wedding, Harper found herself unable to sleep. She sat in the dark living room, fingers curled. Around a cup of tea, listening to the quiet hum of the city beyond the window. Elliot found her there, barefoot in an old t-shirt, eyes tired. What's wrong? She whispered, sitting beside her. Harper shook her head slowly. Nothing's wrong. It's just, I don't know how to carry this much joy. It feels like I'm tempting fate. Elliot leaned her head on Harper's shoulder. You're not tempting anything. You're just letting it in. But what if something happens? What if this doesn't last? Then we'll face it together. But I don't believe in living half a life out of fear. Harper's voice cracked when she replied, I'm not used to people staying. I know, Elliot said, but I'm not people, I'm yours. And that silenced the doubt better than any reassurance could. The next morning, Harper opened a letter tucked under her coffee mug. Elliot's handwriting, slanted and steady, read, To my almost wife, thank you for choosing me, for letting me into the world you built with your own hands. I'll spend the rest of my life protecting it, loving you, laughing with you, and reminding you that you never have to be alone again. Harper didn't cry. She simply folded the note and slipped it into her wallet, right next to the picture Caleb drew months ago of the three of them under a rainbow. The week was filled with moments that felt like stitches pulling their world tighter together. Elliot's father built the arch they'd stand beneath. Harper's sister flew in with a box of handmade table decorations and enough emotional speeches to fill a journal. Caleb practiced walking down the aisle while narrating it like a NASA countdown. Commencing, launch in 3, 2, 1, a love. The night before the wedding, Harper lay beside Elliot in bed, their fingers entwined between them. You ready? She whispered. I've never been readier for anything in my life. You know, Harper murmured, if someone had told me 2 years ago that the love of my life would break down on my street with a busted truck and a smirk that made my knees weak, Elliot laughed. You would have fixed my engine and set me on my way. Maybe I would have fallen in love with you. The second, you told me I looked good covered in grease. You did still do. Harper rolled on top of her, grinning. We're getting married tomorrow. We are, and you're still sure? Absolutely. Are you? Harper didn't hesitate. Completely. They kissed slow and deep. The kind of kiss that held the weight of every promise they were about to make. When they finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, the room pulsed with something quiet and powerful. Certainty. The kind that only comes when love has been earned, tested, and chosen again and again. The kind that lasts. The morning of the wedding arrived with golden light and air so still it felt sacred. The backyard was already strung with fairy lights. The arch Elliot's father built wrapped in wildflowers, Harper had picked herself the day before. Folding chairs lined the grass, mismatched and charming, borrowed from friends and neighbors. A soft breeze carried the scent of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. And somewhere inside, Harper's sister was laughing too loudly at something while trying to curl Harper's hair. "You realize this is just a backyard," Harper said, sitting still with wide eyes, "not some castle." "Excuse me," her sister said, twisting. "Another walk. But you're about to marry a woman who makes pancakes at 2 a.m. and fixes your broken lamp without asking. That's queen behavior, and queens deserve curls." Harper huffed a laugh, but said nothing else. Her heart was too full, too. "Steady." Caleb burst into the room a minute later in a white button-up and the infamous silver cape. "Everyone's here," he announced. "And I told the guests no one's allowed to cry until the kiss." Harper stood smoothing her dress, simple, flowing, soft against her skin. She looked in the mirror, half expecting to feel a flash of doubt, a whisper of fear. But there was only calm. There was only yes. Elliot was waiting under the arch when Harper stepped outside, flanked by her sister on one side and Caleb on the other, who gripped a tiny ring box like it held the fate of the galaxy. Elliot wore a deep green suit with her hair down, eyes locked on Harper like the world had narrowed to just this moment, and maybe it had. Time slowed, people blurred. Harper could barely breathe as she walked toward her, but it wasn't nerves. It was awe, because this woman, this life, this love, they were hers and she was ready. When Harper reached her, Elliot took her hands immediately, holding them like they were the answer to every question she'd ever asked. "Hi," Elliot whispered. "Hi," Harper whispered back. The officiant smiled gently. "Welcome, everyone. We are gathered here not just to witness a union, but to celebrate what happens when two people find each other at exactly the right moment, even when it feels like the wrong time." Elliot squeezed Harper's hands. Harper smiled through tears. They exchanged vase without scripts, just truths. Harper went first. "I wasn't looking for you," she began, voice trembling. "I was late. I was tired, and I had no idea that fixing your truck would be the beginning of fixing parts of me I didn't even know were broken. You made me feel safe, seen, loved in ways I didn't think I'd ever get to feel again. And I promise from this day forward to choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially then." Elliot took a shaky breath, her voice thick with emotion. "I loved you the moment you looked under my hood and told me my truck was being dramatic. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of everything. You let me into your life, into your son's life, and never once made me feel like I had to earn love with perfection. You taught me that staying is a kind of bravery. So I promise to stay in the joy, in the chaos, in the quiet. I promise to love you fiercely and gently and to never let you forget that you are enough." The rings were exchanged with trembling, fingers and soft laughter. Caleb, with all the solemnity in the world, handed each ring like he was handing over destiny itself. And when the words came, "I now pronounce you wife and wife," Harper didn't wait. She kissed Elliot with everything she had, one hand cupping her cheek, the other wrapped around her waist, holding her steady, holding her close, holding her home. The guests erupted in cheers. Caleb threw flower petals in the air like confetti, then shouted, "Okay, now everyone can cry." The reception was held under string lights and open skies. Homemade food, dancing barefoot, stories shared between clinking glasses. Elliot's dad gave a speech that made half the guests cry. Harper's sister toasted to healing and growth and love that shows up when we stop expecting it. At one point in the evening, Harper found Elliot leaning against a fence alone, watching the sky turn to dusk. She walked over, slipping her hand into hers. "You okay?" Elliot looked at her and smiled. "I'm married to the love of my life. I'm more than okay." "This is the part where we get to breathe," Harper said, pressing a kiss to her shoulder, "and build everything together." Elliot turned to her fully, eyes soft. "Think we'll still be dancing? Like this world, absolutely. Slower, probably barefoot, but still dancing." Caleb came running toward them with frosting on his nose. "I caught the bouquet," he said proudly. "I don't think that's how it works," Harper said, laughing. Too late. I'm the next one to get married. And I'm having a cake made entirely of waffles. Elliot grinned. Then we'll be your flower moms. As the night wounded down, as guests said goodbye and the lights dimmed, Harper and Elliot stood hand in hand, watching Caleb twirl in the grass with his cape flying behind him. He's happy, Harper whispered. We're happy, Elliot said. And it was true. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more bracing for loss. Just love, chosen, kept, protected in all its beautiful, ordinary, powerful ways. And as they walked, back inside, arms around each other, laughter and warmth trailing behind them, Harper thought, I was never late. I met her right on time.